Now that we have spoken about how data is stored, we can start working with it. As a first step, let's learn how to import and export data. We've already loaded some data into our Atlas cluster. Say we wanted to export this data to a local machine or a different system entirely. Is that possible? Absolutely. But first, let's decide what format we're going to use. As we learned in the previous lesson, data in MongoDB is stored in BSON, but is viewed in JSON. BSON is great, but isn't really human readable. If I'm looking to just store this data and then maybe transfer it to a different system or cluster, my best bet would be to export in BSON. It's lighter and faster. However, if I plan on viewing this data and reading through it locally after I export it, then a human-readable JSON is a better choice. In this lesson, we'll look at 4 commands, 2 that have to do with importing data and exporting data in JSON, Mongo import and Mongo export, and 2 that have to do with importing and exporting data in BSON, Mongo restore and Mongo dump. Once the choice of format is made, we can proceed to export the data. Mongo dump allows me to get the data I'm looking for in BSON form, while Mongo export stores the JSON format of the same data. Let's look at each of these commands in action. You may recognize the URI string from when we first connected to the Atlas cluster. URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. In MongoDB's case, we are using an SRV string to connect to your Atlas cluster, which is a more specific connection string format that is used to establish a secure connection between your application and a MongoDB instance. The string has been updated from the last time you saw it. Username and password are now part of the string. You can use the URI connection string in this format in the future when connecting to your Atlas cluster. Then, an @ sign directs us to our unique Atlas cluster. And finally, we must specify which database we're looking to export, which is included at the end of the URI string. Let's look at the results that Mongo dump produced. I'm expecting to see a BSON file somewhere. I can even attempt to view the data. But since we have decided to export the data in BSON, it's not very easy to read. Time to try the export where we have the luxury to choose a different format for the data. We're still required to authenticate and specify the database of interest. But this time around, we get to choose a specific collection and a file name in which this collection will be stored. In this example, I'm choosing to use sample supplies database, the sales collection, and using the file name sales.json. Let's verify that this worked before we move on to trying out the import commands. And it does. I see the JSON syntax, and I'm able to identify fields and values in this document without having to decipher anything, though it is a little messy looking. Importing data works just like exporting it does. You need to have either a BSON or JSON file that you're looking to import, and depending what you have available, you can either use Mongo restore or Mongo import. Mongo restore loads data from a binary database dump created by Mongo dump. So using the two in conjunction can be a backup strategy if you have to do manual backup and restore at some point. Since we just created a binary database dump, let's see if we can import it back to the source. Success! In this case, we're still using the URI string that contains the username, password, and our target database. Then we have to specify drop, which removes the existing database in that location. This helps prevent getting lots of errors about duplicate entries in the database. Then we can create the new database from the BSON dump. And last but not least is Mongo import. This command allows us to import a database into a MongoDB instance, which in our case is an Atlas cluster. The dataset can be in JSON or other supported data formats, such as the popular comma-separated value format. And we have to use drop, just like we did with Mongo Restore. You can have additional options with this command, where you specify the name of the collection that will contain this data. If you don't specify it, the collection will take on the name of the file, as you saw in the previous example. In conclusion, depending on why you're importing or exporting data, you might choose a different format to do so. Here are all of the options available to you, and you can use the URI string as your connection string with all of them.